Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. When a rude client asks you a question, do you think I'm an idiot? You don't have to worry. The guy's probably really an idiot, especially if he said it to the restaurant owner's wife. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. My Catholic coworker thought the church should foot all her son's school bills so she could spend on herself. I'll stick to the time I worked for a small Catholic newspaper. Now, just a disclaimer, I myself am not Catholic, but at first, that did not stop me from being hired. This was both a blessing in that it paid the bills, and I got to do what I loved as the sole graphic designer, and a curse in that I worked with some over-the-top people, including one that kept trying to convert me, a woman who was the epitome of being a Karen years before being a Karen was even a thing, and a man who was a deacon who literally spearheaded a campaign with a subordinate of his to gaslight me, and then went on to harass another female worker as well, along with stealing commissions from yet another subordinate. This story involves the Karen, whom we'll call Rachel. Not her real name. Rachel had been hired as a secretary and additional receptionist. We were a small office of up to 10 to 12 people max at any given time. When she came on, she was married and had a child. Like me, she was initially not Catholic, but later became Catholic. I mention this because it's important in the grand scheme of things. See, the only reason she became Catholic, and she openly admitted this to me and others in the office, was that we were all Catholic, and had been for most of their lives, if not all. It's because she found out that by her and her son being Catholic, she could get the church to foot the bill for sending her son to a Catholic private school instead of a public one. She did this because she wanted a private education for her son, but didn't want to pay for it. So she went through the RCIA and had him go through the RCIC and the whole 9 yards, then told their church that they couldn't afford to send him to Catholic school and got the church to pay for it instead. Catholic churches will help parishioners that want to but can't afford to send their kids to Catholic schools do so by paying for the school themselves out of money that's been donated by other parishioners. So she got what she wanted. This frustrated a fellow coworker when she found out because she'd been the sponsor and thought Rachel had been sincere in her wish to be a Catholic. During this time, Rachel made it all but abundantly clear that she only plays Catholic when she needs to, so as to get what she wants or needs, like that money for the school, but has no intention of actually living the life of a Catholic. Now, I had no intention of living life as a Catholic either, so I can understand that part. But then again, I never had any intention of becoming a Catholic, and they all knew this. Whenever Rachel's son needed to buy books or get money for extracurricular activities or lunch money or field trips, etc., Rachel would immediately go to her church's parish office, looking her poorest and most vulnerable, and ask them to cover the amount. And they always did. Again, pissing off our fellow coworker who was a member of the same parish and had sponsored them. We all knew that Rachel's husband made a decent living, but apparently he either didn't know what she was really doing or didn't care. Due to what would happen a few years later, I'm guessing that he didn't know and thought that his money was paying for the school and all the amenities. But while their son, who was a nice kid actually, and so was the husband the few times I met them, and he did love his family, was getting all this paid for by basically everyone else because of their poor status, Rachel was getting tanned and pampered. Yes, Rachel had started spending almost all her lunches either going to a tanning salon, getting $200 to $300 manicures and pedicures, getting some tattoos on her ankles and wrists, getting her hair professionally done and kept up on a weekly basis, and getting spa treatments at least once every 2 weeks. Basically, all the money she spent on her own personal upkeep would have been more than enough to cover her son's schooling at the private Catholic school. What made it all the more ridiculous is that this woman went to tan so often that at one point she went past the normal orangish leathery look and started looking gray. I kid you not, she had gray undertones to her tanning. Not fully gray, just enough of a gray undertone to make several of us question if she was starting to turn into a zombie or something. I do think my coworker tried to tell the church, but without proof, that Rachel was actively trying to scam them, and with Rachel proving that she was poor due to bills and them wanting to give her the benefit of the doubt, nothing ever came of it. It, of course, then came as no surprise, at least to me, later that she decided her husband no longer made enough money, was no longer worth her time, and decided to actively seek out an affair because she wanted something better solidified before fully giving up her cash cow, as it were. But that's another story that I'll tell later. And our second story. EA makes demands in our home after she left my mom in the gutter. Background. Shortly after my mom and dad had me, they decided to move from California to Florida. They were immigrants to this country and therefore were really poor at this time, and my mom was encouraged by entitled aunt to move to Central Florida so that family can be close and it was fairly cheap. Well, things didn't work out as planned, because shortly after the move, my mom found out my dad had been having an affair and got the other woman pregnant. And they promptly divorced, but my dad got everything while my mom got sole custody of me and my older bro. Basically, she had no home, car, phone, nothing. The only place she knew was entitled aunt's house, which was large due to her husband's fairly successful construction company. And per my mom's words, the following happened. My mom knocked on the door and saw that entitled aunt opened it just a slit, looked at her for a solid second, and promptly shut and locked the door. My mom told me she knew what that meant and didn't push it any further, other than to just break down and cry as she walked down the road with us. My mom is a strong woman and builds relationships fast and strong, a trait an introvert like me never got. So she begged her boss for a loan, got a cheap car and a phone, and she sent me, being that I was basically still an infant at this point, back to her home country to be raised by my grandma because she knew she was in no state to take care of a baby, but at least she can take care of a toddler, big bro, and she worked her butt off to afford an apartment, found daycare, with her goal being to eventually bring me back home. It was only after she met my future stepfather she was finally able to do that. The story. About 15 years later, due to the recession of '08, entitled aunt's husband's business flopped and they lost their home and all their savings, and were hotel surfing for a few years until my parents, who were doing a lot better now, offered a welcome hand for them to stay with us, since my mom's a bigger person than I'll ever be. When she arrived with her family, EA immediately demands 2 rooms be allocated for her and the use of one of my parents' cars, and my mom told her it was the couches or nothing, and that shut her up real quick. So every day I came home from school, I had to walk past them, bumming on the couches, and my cousins weren't exactly pleasant to be around either. They always gave a snobbish I'm better than you vibe and generally ignored you to text on their phones, and EA avoided and never spoke to me, while husband was out for weeks doing odd jobs. They didn't do anything around the house, but my parents didn't care as long as they didn't make a mess, and my mom was more than happy to share food, since at least EA knew how to make cuisine from their home country. The breaking point came after week 2, though, when my mom had prepared food for a family party and had it on the counters ready to be transported before she headed out to do her nails. When she came back, everything was gone. This was enough food to feed like 20 people, and they somehow managed to clean out more than half of it, and my mom was pissed. I remember hearing them yelling and arguing. I was told later of what was said, that EA was complaining about our crap hospitality and that if we have food, then we need to share it, that they were being forced to sleep on couches while we kept our rooms, etc. And when my mom pointed out what she did all those years back, EA retorted that she didn't want bums in her home, and with that, EA was kicked out. EA apparently called my grandma to rant and complain. Now EA only ever calls my grandma to ask for money and never spoke to her otherwise, and my mom's considered the golden child in the family and calls her mom daily, so immediately my grandma shut her down and told her she deserves what happened and that she feels sorry for the kids. But now that they're teenagers, they're grown enough that she, Grandma doesn't need to be sending EA money, especially when EA is fully capable of working. EA apparently moved into Uncle's, who's too nice of a guy, house and bummed on their couches for 4 to 6 months before she was kicked out by my aunt after my mom told her over casual chat what EA did to Uncle shortly after he immigrated to the U.S. Last thing my mom ever did for EA was get her a housekeeping job that she quit after 2 days because it was too hard. The last thing I heard of them is that they're still hotel surfing with my now adult cousins and EA not working and the husband still trying to support them. Oh, you want to speak to the owner? No worries, my love. Someone wants to see you. My dad owned a kitchenware store in the early 2000s, and my mom worked as the manager. A customer came in and my mom went over to serve him. And after she'd said a few words in her French accent, this guy went, "That's enough, lady. You think you can sell me more because you're putting on some fake French accent? Do you think I'm an idiot?" He goes on and eventually asks to see the owner. My mom's just done with this a-hole at that point, so she walks to the back room to grab my dad. And on the way, she calls out, "My love," etc. My tall, skinny, mustachioed French dad comes out, and the look on this guy's face when my dad asked him what the effing problem was is really something I wish I'd been there to witness. And our last story. I just want to go on vacation. I've been wanting to go on vacation for a while now. I have 4 kids, and it's not cheap, I know, but I've been saving up and I got a great discount from a resort this coming summer. My mother-in-law is in the middle of renovating her home and requested her 3 children help out financially, which I don't mind. My husband and I keep our finances separate. So we tell her our plans for the summer and she's pissed. Her words were, "Are you serious? How dare you waste money like that, knowing damn well I'm spending too much money on this renovation? How inconsiderate of you." I was honestly shocked that she'd be so blunt. She usually waits till she's alone with my husband to complain about me. I was clear that this vacation was happening with my money, didn't want to argue, and just left. Next day, my sister-in-law calls me and tells me that since I'm being so inconsiderate, the least I could do is take mother-in-law with us on vacation. I told her I couldn't afford it, and she proceeded to tell me that she'd pay half to ask my husband to pay the other half of their mom's accommodations. Long story short, they guilted my husband into paying his mom's tickets and hotel. And I found out today that my sister-in-law is also going on vacation, the same dates and same resorts as we are. Now my mom found out and called me angry, asking why I was paying for my in-laws and didn't even think of inviting her. I then told her I'd try my best to make it happen. Since my mother-in-law was going, I figured, what the hell. So my mom called me today telling me I'd have to pay for my nephew as well since my sister works and can't find someone else to watch him those days. It's still 2 months away. Edit. I just called the resort and requested a date change. We'll be arriving 2 weeks before planned. I don't plan on telling anyone. I couldn't cancel because I already paid for half of it. I also told my mom I just couldn't afford to pay for her and my nephew, so she can't come and she's angry, but since I feel so much better about this trip, I can't care enough. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.